1 year after the U.S. military withdrawal from Afghanistan and the chaotic evacuation of civilians.
Every family that we have absolutely, needs to be here as a life-saving measure. That if they were to still be in Afghanistan, they would be targeted or under threat.
We speak to leaders helping thousands of Afghan refugees here in the U.S. and with one Afghan journalist who escaped Taliban rule.
I just call her Mother Mary, Mother Mary. So Mother Mary has been, mother of my life and my faith.
A dedication to the Blessed Mother leads one woman to embark on founding a new religious order in the U.S., why she says this order is needed in America.
The faith is really alive here, and that's what I like.
Singing, sports, and Holy Mass, the summer event that's uniting Catholic families and bringing them to the altar. EWTN News In Depth starts now. Afghanistan, 1 year later. The United States officially completed the withdrawal of U.S. troops in late August 2021, handing over the rule of the nation to the Taliban. The terrorist group is marking the anniversary with street celebrations, chanting victory cries near the former U.S. embassy. In the years since, the Taliban has applied Sharia law, forbidding women to work and go to school, and forcing Christians and other religious minorities into hiding, as adherence to any religion other than Islam is punishable by death. The U.S. military withdrawal sparked outcry from many, who said it was too rushed and would leave Afghanistan in a dire situation. I'm sure you remember the scene at Kabul airport. The U.S. military leading the evacuation of tens of thousands of Afghans, as well as Americans and citizens of other nations trying to get out of the country. Our coverage included the heart-wrenching images of Afghans desperate to leave, handing children to service members in chaotic scenes at Kabul airport as they tried to get over the airport walls. And the unforgettable image of Afghans sitting in a massive military cargo plane, capturing the fear, relief, and uncertainty of the moment. During the withdrawal, 13 service members lost their lives in a terrorist explosion at the airport as they worked non-stop to help people escape. These were the last Americans who made the ultimate sacrifice during America's longest war. For more than 20 years, American troops and their allies fought and died there. Welcome to EWTN News In Depth. The impossible task of getting everyone out by the withdrawal deadline left thousands of Afghans, Americans, and other foreign nationals behind. The chaotic scene last summer is seen by many as a major foreign policy mistake by the Biden administration. It has impacted President Joe Biden's public approval ratings, which have never fully recovered. Still recovering from the trauma of leaving their homeland and escaping a life under the Taliban regime are the refugees. They were flown to countries around the world to get a new start in societies that embrace democracy. Here in the United States, more than 70,000 are now calling America home. Mark Irons spoke to those who've been on the front lines, helping refugees adapt to life in the U.S.
This time last year, images of the chaotic U.S. troop withdrawal and refugee evacuation in Afghanistan cycling over and over again on the news. For Direction Siddiqui, the news out of Afghanistan was something she lived all the time as a journalist before escaping herself last August.
I don't have any relative, any friend or any family in here in the United States.
Siddiqui is a 22-year-old Afghan refugee resettled in America. A Catholic Charities in Lansing, Michigan gave her needed assistance when she first arrived. She now has a place to live, and she's even made friends. But Siddiqui says she spends a lot of time worrying about her family who stayed behind, even as she has transitioned well to life in the U.S.
A lot of time I'm thinking I'm physically in here, but mentally I'm in Afghanistan.
When refugees like Direction began pouring into the U.S. last year, they were first shipped to U.S. military bases. After months staying there, they were connected with resettlement agencies around the country, and some are just now adjusting to life in the U.S.
So it hasn't really been a full year of being in the communities as much as it's been a year of kind of chaos for those families.
Jessica Estrada is on the front lines overseeing assistance to refugees. She's the director of newcomer service programs with Catholic Charities in Arlington, Virginia. At one facility, she showed us floor-to-ceiling stacks of donations. This Catholic Charities warehouse is jam-packed with items for the refugees, from mattresses, silverware, pots and pans, to all kinds of personal hygiene items like soap and toothbrushes. The needs are great in this part of the country. According to the U.S. Department of State, Virginia has the third highest number of resettled Afghan refugees.
It's still very much a local community and a U.S. government effort.
State Department official Holly Herrera works in the Bureau of Population, Refugees, and Migration. She applauds faith-based groups who have helped Afghans transition to life in America and said the resettlement effort has been a massive government undertaking.
It's certainly the largest in recent history.
More than 70,000 Afghan refugees are now living throughout the country. Herrera says they were thoroughly vetted before being admitted into communities, and she reports many began finding employment soon after arrival.
Just 3 months after arrival, if you can imagine that, over 50% of the Afghans who are employable have jobs.
But their future is unclear. The refugees are currently here under humanitarian parole, a government-issued status that gives them 2 years from the time of their arrival. They're still concerned that they might not have a home a year from now when that status is up.
It is clear, of course, that this is a concern on the minds of Afghans because, yes, they do need to be able to adjust status in order to be able to stay in this country permanently.
On Capitol Hill this month, a bipartisan group of lawmakers proposed one solution, legislation called the Afghan Adjustment Act, which would allow the refugees to become lawful permanent residents. The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops added its voice of support for the act. In a letter to Congress, the chairman of the Committee on Migration, Bishop Mario Dorsonville, wrote, "This bipartisan bill would lift the cloud of legal uncertainty currently faced by tens of thousands of Afghans." Many of the refugees now here assisted U.S. military forces during the 20-year war in Afghanistan. Bishop Dorsonville continues, "This service comes at a great personal sacrifice as they now face the threat of persecution and even death if returned to their native Afghanistan. And they remain concerned for loved ones still in the country who could be targeted by the Taliban in retaliation."
We do hear, my brother's been threatened, my kids are still there and they had to go to Pakistan because they're in hiding.
As a journalist, Dorekshan Siddiqui knows the threats are real. For those opposed to or critical of the Taliban, the result can be fatal.
Taliban kills my 2 colleagues in my office.
ISIS claimed responsibility for the 2018 murders she is referring to, but regardless, journalists have a dangerous job in Afghanistan. As he helps manage the warehouse filled with refugee donations in Virginia, Thompson Stephen shares what it's like to live in a dangerous war-torn region where your life is at risk.
So because of that, we had to flee.
Stephen came to the U.S. as a refugee from Liberia 20 years ago when his African country was engulfed in civil war. He's now an American citizen and works with Catholic Charities, the same organization that helped him when he first arrived.
Any refugee who is coming as a new person, I try to be able to encourage them, try to tell them that, hey, I was in your shoes once, and I understand what you're going through. So please give us the chance for us to be able to help you.
It's the same route Dorekshan Siddiqui has taken. She is now employed at the Catholic Charities that helped her in Michigan. As a case manager, she helps refugees who need the same assistance she received almost a year ago.
I am right now so happy to join in here and serve and help with the Afghan refugee.
The needs of refugees remained piled up a year after their arrival. Still, Jessica Estrada tells me people have asked her why the Catholic Church is helping those who don't share the same faith. The majority of the Afghan refugees are Muslim.
It really is a testament to who we are. And what we believe in terms of the dignity of the human person. And that dignity is for any person, regardless of their faith tradition, their age, where they've come from. And this is really a way to put that into action.
Mark Irons, EWTN News In Depth.
Refugees have a long road to travel to feel acclimated to America. Judy Harris speaks to us from Michigan, where she's been helping Afghans who were lucky enough to make it to the U.S. over the past year. Judy, it's so wonderful to have you back on the show. It's been a year. What can you tell us about the number of people who you have received from this withdrawal, and how many refugees St. Vincent Catholic Charities is helping right now?
So it's been a crazy year, very different from anything we've ever experienced. It seems like it was actually really long ago that everybody started coming, but we had committed to resettling 300 Afghan humanitarian parolees through the program, the evacuation program, and we ended up with 289, so almost 300.
Right.
And all different kinds of people from different areas. In the beginning, it was really crazy. People were coming with hardly any notice. They were just, arriving. And so we had to put people in hotels initially because we couldn't find permanent housing fast enough. But at this point, everybody is in their own permanent housing in a rental house, enjoying life and enjoying the beautiful summers of Michigan. The kids were in school. They're going to be starting school again next week. So it's been great. And I think we've done a great job and people are becoming very successful here.
Hopefully they'll flourish. Judy, what was it like, the composition of the people that came over? Individuals, families, children on their own? What can you tell us about that?
Mostly small families. We had quite a few individuals. They actually came here without their families. So they have families back home and we're very concerned about them because they're very distraught having had to leave people. In some cases, people had to leave them at the airport in Kabul. They were separated by a door. So there was a lot of trauma based on that and a lot of grief and many challenges with folks that were in that situation. So we did have a lot of single people who came that way, but they aren't actually single. They do have families back at home. But we had lots of families with small kids. We've already had 14 babies born here.
Wow.
Yeah, we had lots of expectant moms. We still have 8 more moms who are expectant. Most of them were from the Afghan community. We also had some from the Congolese and the Sudanese communities too.
Wow. Okay. Is that the toughest challenge, the connection to family members and friends that are left behind? Or what is it that was most either heartbreaking or challenging for your team?
I think it's really that it's having the families left behind. With the folks coming over here, they're very concerned about them. They're still concerned about them. There's a lot of food insecurity right now in Afghanistan. So people are very concerned about that and not knowing what they're, because we still don't really know what resources are available to bring people here because they're still in kind of a precarious immigration status.
So then what does that help look like? What do you do for them when they come over? They arrive in your care. Are you in charge of both their paperwork as well as their welfare?
Yes. So we do all the paperwork with them. We have connected everybody to our immigration law clinic so they can get their immigration status figured out. And we find them housing and we make sure they have food. We do all of their support to get them benefits like Medicaid. We help support their health screenings. We get the kids enrolled in school, and then we get them jobs. And right now, everybody who came last year, all of the Afghans who came are working.
Wow.
And they're all in permanent housing. And yeah, they're doing really well.
So you really set them up to take care of themselves. That's incredible.
Yeah, that's the goal, is that they become self-sufficient as soon as possible.
That's fantastic. What does the future hold for them? Is there a path to residency or citizenship, or do they dream of going back? You mentioned the immigration clinic.
Yes, so everybody is hoping to stay here as far as we know and to be able to bring their families here. And there are a couple little programs that we're trying to work through to see if they can bring some of their family members, especially those that were separated at the airport in Kabul. But there's actually an act that's just been introduced into both the House and the Senate, the Afghan Adjustment Act. And so if that passes, then that will give everybody a path to citizenship through, ideally, they'll be able to become permanent residents and then possibly citizens someday. So we're hoping to see what's going to happen with that.
A hope and a dream. Do you and your team need help? And if so, what kind of help do you need?
Well, yeah, we do need a lot of help. We still need housing, and I think this is nationwide. Housing, decent, safe, and affordable housing is short right now. So we're always looking for housing resources and staffing. We know that there's a labor shortage everywhere at every fast food industry and every place that we're visiting, but it's the same with us as well. And so we're always looking for staff. And, we have more refugees coming in. We've had 112 other refugees from other parts of the world come in at the same time. So we continue to be busy with all of them. And we're expecting about 500 more people next year. So we expect to be busy still for the next couple of years. This is what we do. And this is our works are part of our faith in God and what we want to do.
That's beautiful. Well, thank you for your work and for staying on the front lines of this crisis and so many others.
Thank you.
Head over to the Catholic Charities website at catholiccharitiesusa.org to learn more about their ministry to help refugees and how you can lend a hand. Still to come on EWTN News In Depth, Pope Francis calls cardinals to the Vatican, what to expect from the upcoming meeting of the College of Cardinals, and the latest on the worldwide Synod on Synodality, a report from Rome. Plus,
what is the interest of rebuilding this? It is to rebuild trust by working together on a common project.
Out of the destruction and pain of war, the reconstruction of a Catholic Church is serving to reconstruct a broken community. But first,
que creemos en el poder de la oración, creemos en el poder de Jesús sacramentado.
A Nicaraguan bishop thrown behind bars after being placed on house arrest. We dive into the tightening grip of President Daniel Ortega's regime on the Catholic Church next. Four Catholic nuns in Nigeria have been released from their captors after being abducted on Sunday. The Sisters of Jesus the Savior were on their way to Mass in Imo State when they were taken. It's the latest attack on Christians in the country, including a bombing of a Catholic church back in June. The four sisters were unharmed, and no group has claimed responsibility for the abduction. An update now on the Nicaraguan bishop who was blocked by police from leaving the street he lives on just 2 weeks ago. Bishop Rolando Alvarez is now imprisoned. The Nicaraguan National Police broke into the bishop's residence in Matagalpa at 3 a.m. 1 week ago, alleging the bishop is part of a destabilizing and provocative activity. The bishop has been outspoken about the regime's many human rights violations. President Daniel Ortega and his wife, Vice President Rosario Murillo, have cracked down on Catholic Church leaders ever since mass anti-government demonstrations in 2018. Many of those protesters sought refuge from the authoritarian government and pro-government forces in churches and cathedrals. Nadine Maenza, the former chair of the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom and current president of Patriot Voices, joins us now to provide more context on the situation in Nicaragua. Her organization advocates for international religious freedom. Nadine, it's great to have you back. You've seen the peaceful support of democracy by religious leaders before. Bishop Alvarez has been outspoken against the government, but has never called for violence. Is that right?
That's right. And he's one of many that wanted to just have a space for people to safely talk about human rights, to speak out about different issues, and is never advocated for violence. And yet here he's the target of this harsh treatment.
And let's talk about that 2018 protest. We saw a massive uprising. Is that sentiment still strong with Nicaraguans? Does the resistance to the government look like and feel like what they were protesting then?
Well, I think now there's a lot of fear, so you're not seeing that same sort of protesting. But what you saw at that moment was a Catholic Church wanted to have a dialogue and have a place to bring together all the different opinions. And the government turned on the church, at first saying it was okay, and then turning on them, and it's really continued. And it's just escalated, and it's become a stranger and a more oppressive environment since.
And how do you describe what the people in Nicaragua are protesting?
Right. So really what you're seeing is all space for any speech that isn't approved by the government eliminated. And so really the last human rights advocates are these priests and the Christian community as a whole. And I'd really like to add that, most of the evangelical community is standing with the Catholic Church as they're taking so much of the brunt of this attack. And, the Nicaraguan president and his wife, who is the vice president and a very powerful force, they have taken religious language now to frame their own roles as, quote, saviors of Nicaragua, using words like anointed by God for sacred Nicaragua. And they're really trying to pit the Catholic clergy as being against God and as terrorists, which is a dangerous term to use against these peaceful priests, because they have really strict laws against terrorism there. And so it's setting up for a really disturbing environment.
And Nadine, President Ortega and his wife, they consider themselves Catholic. Is his Catholicism something that he promotes or discusses, aside from using religious language like you just mentioned?
Yeah, it seems they have merged it with some sort of like new age kind of talk. And his wife, the vice president, who gives these very theatrical speeches that they've dressed the statues of Mary and Sandinistan colors of their political party, and really try to turn this into a nationalist, where they're co-opting religion and trying to really quiet the voices of authentic religion.
And the religion narrative is one that recently has come out at the forefront of this conflict in Nicaragua. And there have been greater calls for condemnation of the bishop's arrest from the U.S., international community. And many have questioned the lack of forceful response from the Vatican. Who has weighed in?
Right. Well, the Pope did on Sunday make a rare reference to Nicaragua, saying, that he would like to express his conviction and hope that there'll be an open dialogue for respect and peaceful coexistence. So you're starting to see people that notice what's happening and how, this hate speech at first seems to now be turning into action, as we're seeing priests blocked from leaving their homes. I mean, Bishop Alvarez, he had a 2-week standoff where they literally didn't have food coming in. They were rationing food, couldn't leave his own residence to go perform mass. And so these are the kind of, and we're seeing similar treatment in terms of other clergy have also reported having, checkpoints in front of their residences by their mass. So you see we're afraid that there might be a more aggressive stance even coming, which is why it's important that the global community, the U.S. government, speak out now and make it clear that this is not acceptable.
And what might that look like? What are you looking for from these governments?
Well, first of all, privately, there's a lot they can do, and I think we don't always see that. But I know for the U.S., they have in March, they didn't use religious freedom or religious framing, but they did sanction 9 officials for human rights violations, and then actually in June, 93 others, including judges, prosecutors. And so these are ways that you could de-incentivize this type of behavior. And obviously, when countries are working together to do it, it's far more effective. And so it is important at this moment that the international community use all the levers they have to push back on this government from taking this any further.
Well, we appreciate your advocacy, and we'll be watching this closely. Thank you so much, Nadine.
Thanks for having me.
Coming up on EWTN News In Depth, summer camp is not just for kids. How entire families are taking part in a unique Catholic camp.
I do feel like even though our church is wounded and we are still kind of in the middle of the storm, whether the scandal and relativism and all these challenges that we are facing today as a church, I still believe that we're going to make it to the shore of peace and hope.
Healing a Wounded Church, the founder of a young religious order, shares the path she believes will bring lost sheep back to Christ. Plus, we're following developing news on the Synod on Synodality at the Vatican. The latest from Rome next. News of a meeting this weekend at the highest levels of the Vatican tops our week in review. Pope Francis is calling for a formal meeting of the College of Cardinals on Saturday. This gathering is called a consistory. A group of 20 bishops and priests will be elevated to the position of cardinal during what's known as a public ordinary consistory. It will be followed by a second brief consistory in which the cardinals will approve the canonization of 2 new saints. Then on Monday and Tuesday, the cardinals will go into a private extraordinary consistory. It's only the third of its kind in Francis's pontificate. The gathering will allow for a discussion on the new constitution governing the Roman Curia. The Extraordinary Consistory is an opportunity for cardinals from around the world to meet personally and get to know one another better. Pope Francis will be 86 later this year, older than Pope John Paul was at the time of his death. The potential of a coming conclave is increasingly on the cardinal electors' minds. After the new cardinals are created this weekend, Pope Francis will have appointed 62% of all cardinals eligible to elect his successor. And this comes after a Friday press conference at the Vatican announcing the next phase of the Vatican Synod on Synodality has officially begun. Pope Francis began the 2-year process last fall, allowing Catholics at all levels, parishioner to priest, to provide input to bishops about the future of the Church. Having received local feedback during listening sessions from dioceses around the world, the Synod now shifts to the continental phase, where bishops from each continent will discuss main themes gathered from the faithful.
What is important, I think, in this process is not a change of doctrine, but what is important is to listen to everybody, to listen also to the suffering of people. I think of parents, for instance, of people concerned, and to have a change not of doctrine, but a change of attitude.
When all of the information is synthesized, the final report will go to the Synod of Bishops for consideration in the bishops' conversations about the future of the Church. That meeting is set for October 2023. EWTN News Executive Editor and Washington, D.C. Bureau Chief Dr. Matthew Bunson attended that press conference and joins us from our Rome Bureau with more insights into both the consistory and the Synod on synodality. Matthew, it's great to have you here. The gathering of cardinals and the Pope's desire to consult with them isn't unusual. What does Pope Francis hope to achieve?
Well, it's very clear that Pope Francis, as you note, has now appointed a majority of the members of the College of Cardinals, especially those who might participate in a conclave. That means that those who are under the age of 80. So this is an opportunity to bring that really transformed body since 2014, the last time he brought all of them together, to have very clear discussions. We don't know a lot of the cardinals, but it's also true that a lot of the cardinals don't know each other. So this is a real opportunity for them to get to know each other, to have an assessment of each other, but then to talk about the pressing issues of our time, which I think is one of the goals that Pope Francis has in this discussion about the reform of the Roman Curia as a segue, I think, to other things that he hopes to do.
Might that include some of the various events in the Church, the tightening of restrictions on the Latin Mass and the developments in the German Synod? They would seem the topics ripe for discussion. Will that be a part of this gathering?
Well, publicly, at least, Pope Francis wants them to concentrate on Predicate Evangelium, the decree that he used to reform the Roman Curia. That is a decree that's going to impact all of the cardinals, and it might even impact, if speculation is true, the way that the next conclave is going to be conducted. Certainly, Pope Francis has the reform of the central government as it spans out now across the world, and ripples are felt around the world, that the cardinals really want to focus on that. But it is inevitable that as these discussions unfold, that there are going to be pressing issues. I suspect that the upcoming Synod of Bishops, that is now much a topic of conversation here, certainly today, is going to factor into this, as well as, I think, trying to deepen an understanding on the part of all the cardinals of Francis's vision for synodality that has become one of the great hallmarks of this pontificate. So there is much to discuss, and one of the question marks in this extraordinary synod is going to be how open the cardinals feel about expressing opinions and concerns, or is this going to be more of a listening session about that document, Predicate Evangelium, more than perhaps setting the table for a conclave?
You mentioned Predicate Evangelium and the focus on evangelization. It begs the question of the breakdown of country of origin for new and existing cardinals, as it's still not reflective of the location of the world population of Catholics. Are there any guidelines around those appointments, and do we know what the new cardinals are being elevated will do?
Well, we have seen throughout Francis's pontificate a pattern, and this consistory follows that pattern pretty closely. For example, he has appointed several new prefects or heads of dicasteries. Arthur Roach, for example, the head of the dicastery for liturgy and the sacraments. But then he also, as is his pattern, skipping some of the larger cardinalatial sees, traditional sees. I think of Milan, for example, where one of the suffragan or bishops who are part of that province has been appointed, not actually the Archbishop of Milan, who was himself appointed by Pope Francis, or Cardinal-elect Robert McElroy from San Diego, who's himself a suffragan of Los Angeles, Archbishop Jose Gomez of Los Angeles, the largest archdiocese in the United States, has quite conspicuously not been given the red hat. But then Francis is also continuing his important pattern of choosing cardinals from the periferia, all the corners of the world. We see that in particular with the appointment of Cardinal Giorgio Marengo, who is the apostolic prefect, not even a diocesan bishop because this diocese is growing, it's too young, in Mongolia. He's also the youngest of the cardinals at 47, which was the same age as Karol Wojtyła was when he was appointed a cardinal in 1967. So the size of the Catholic population in the given country is no indicator, as far as Francis is concerned, that it's relevant to his appointments. What he wants very clearly is to have these voices from all the corners of the world, and certainly this group coming from East Timor, from India, from Brazil, and Mongolia and Singapore, I think represents Francis's vision for all of those corners being heard.
That's right. Really quickly, just wrapping up the conversation around the Synod on Synodality. It continues with churches around the country and the world cleaning up their listening. What can we expect will come next?
Well, next is the continental phase. So we're moving to the next level for the Synod. These will be going on now for several months as each of the continents sort of try to assemble all of the massive amounts of data. All of this pointing toward next year when it's sent back to Rome. We'll have what's called the Instrumentum Laboris, which is the working document. And then all eyes are looking toward October of 23, when all of us will gather here in Rome to cover the Synod on Synodality, which is now a multi-year process.
We'll be watching closely. Thank you so much, Matthew. This weekend's consistory could signal a conciliatory gesture towards Cardinal Angelo Becciu, who says Pope Francis invited him to participate. Becciu remains a cardinal, though he resigned from all his positions and rights as a cardinal in 2020. He's charged with embezzlement, money laundering, fraud, and abuse of office in a trial that is currently ongoing in connection with the Vatican's purchase of a luxury property in London.
It really inspires and really strengthens our spiritual life, I would say.
Inspiring Catholics to dive deeper into their faith. Ahead on EWTN News In Depth. And
the bell tower is composed of 4 clocks, and the same hour was given to all Christians and Muslims.
A Catholic church almost destroyed by ISIS stands as a symbol of unity in Iraq. The work being done now to reconstruct it. Rebuilding an iconic Catholic landmark in Iraq. After ISIS partially destroyed, looted, and ransacked the more than 100-year-old building, Our Lady of the Hour Dominican Latin Church stands at the crossroads of cultures and faiths in the old city of Mosul. It's an emblem of diversity and coexistence. Welcome back to EWTN News In Depth. The church tower is a staple of the Mosul skyline, along with the famed Al-Nouri Mosque minaret. Reconstruction on both of these historical sites and others in Mosul is currently underway with the help of financial backing from the United Arab Emirates and the assistance of the United Nations Economic and Social Council. Our Lady of the Hour Church was built between 1866 and 1873 by the Dominicans of the province of France. The famous clock tower, which was the first clock tower in Mesopotamia, was a gift of Napoleon III's wife. The site was also home to the first school for girls in Iraq and the first printing press in the region. During the Islamic State occupation of the city from 2014 to 2017, it was torn apart, with valuable pieces sold off. They also used part of the building as a prison. A lot of hard work is being put into bringing it back to its former glory.
We are not building for ourselves. I've got gray hair, so the next generation is our priority. Iraq is a young country, old and young at the same time. 40% of the population is under 14 years old. So if we do this, it's not for the youngsters, but with them, and for them to take responsibility when we will be gone.
Father Raed Adel, head of the Syriac Catholic Churches in Mosul, says that by working together on a common project, citizens of Mosul are also rebuilding trust. Construction is expected to be completed by this time next year. It's serving as an on-the-job training opportunity for locals. The church in Iraq has suffered greatly in the last few decades. One woman familiar with that suffering is Mother Olga of the Sacred Heart. The images of her youth were painted by war, first in the Iran-Iraq War and then with the U.S. invasion. She has seen destruction, death, and despair in her fellow man, but found refuge in the mantle of our Blessed Mother. Here is Mother Olga on the record. Mother Olga, it's so wonderful of you to give us your time. I know that your story is one that's rich in the history of the universality of the church, but you also have something very beautiful about you, which is that you created a new order through the beautiful gift of the Holy Spirit that put that wonderful calling into your heart. Let's start with your story. You came into the Catholic Church as...
I was part of the Assyrian Church of the East, which we are originally from Nineveh. It's an Eastern rite that's not in union with Rome. So I became in full communion with the Roman Catholic Church on September 8 in 2005.
Tell us about the Nineveh. We hear a lot about the Nineveh Plains. When you think about the persecuted church, a lot of people don't really know what to make of the Middle East. So can you tell us a little bit about what that region is like?
It used to be really very beautiful, especially like early centuries of Christianity. And it's really so beautiful to see like how the early Christians, started in what used to be called Mesopotamia, the modern day Iraq. And we still have the ruins of the first church that we believe it was built, and Christianity was brought by St. Thomas the Apostles, and that's why he is our patron for the Church of Iraq, St. Thomas the Apostle. So we have the ruin of the first church from 67 after Jesus.
And Mother Olga, knowing this deep, rich history of Christianity there, what moved you? Why did you feel called to come into communion with the Roman Catholic Church?
So first I was sent here for school. I came to United States for school, and then I lived with American sisters, Roman Catholic sisters, and I was really very drawn to the strong devotion to the Blessed Mother and the Holy Eucharist. And I was really drawn to adoration, to the daily communion, daily Mass, and all the beautiful devotions, to the Blessed Mother and the apparitions, when I got to learn about Our Lady of Guadalupe and Our Lady of Lourdes, Our Lady of Fatima. So it's really like, I always say there is no, better church or wrong or right. It's just, I was longing for something more, and what I was longing for I found it in the Catholic Church.
Let's think about then why we long for these things. I know that a lot of people, they look at your habit, they look at your joy. It's so easy to see that you are full of the love of Christ and covered in Our Lady's mantle. But there's some brokenness in your story too. Nothing is perfect.
No.
And so you say that you were longing for the sacrament, and you live through the beautiful love that is given to you in the sacraments.
Yes.
But it's for good reasons. What was your childhood like?
I grew up in a very intense home and intense childhood. First just in the brokenness in my own family and my parents' marriage and my father's addiction, but also from a very young age. I was only in the 5th grade when the first war started between Iraq and Iran, and that took about 8 years of my childhood and teenage years. And like when I was in high school, I never our school got bombed, and we saw blood so much, around us, our, friends in school, our teachers, like a lot of my peers, they never imagined we're gonna survive first and ever imagine that we can go to college or study, or like it's beautiful here, you see kids in high school, they start visiting colleges to pick up where they wanna go.
Yes.
But the youth of my generation, really, they didn't have any of that hope. So it was really like the years of suffering. Like recently when there was on the news the sound of the siren when the people of Ukraine had to run to the safe refuge place. Like I told the sisters, that's the sound of my childhood. That's all what I remember, shelters and shelters and shelters. So it was really in those moments when I was introduced to the Holy Rosary by my Chaldean Catholic neighbor. I remember whenever I used to hear the sound of the bomb and missiles, and I used to put my head under the pillow and squeeze my rosary. Until now, I don't do anything without squeezing my rosary. But it was really Our Lady who gave me hope, she has been always my mother of my life, really. She has mothered me in my wounds and my fears and my anxiety. She's been mother of my faith. She brought me to the Catholic Church, because of my devotion to her. She's been a mother of my vocation. I'm a daughter of Mary. That's the name of my community. So, yes, suffering really brought me closer to my faith.
And it's important for us to remember that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the name of your community. So you come to the U.S., Cardinal Sean in Boston asks you to consider and pray about starting an order. You finally, I'm going to just tell everyone your story. You received this beautiful confirmation after making a retreat in Mexico at Our Lady of Guadalupe's shrine. You come home and you choose this name.
When I knew the Lord gave us confirmation through Our Lady of Guadalupe that, she wanted this order for Americans in the United States, I just knew that it has to be a Marian order. And I remember I said to the bishop, I cannot imagine myself being a sister of Mary, because I knew it has to be Marian order. And I said, I really love to always be a daughter of Mary. So I picked the name Daughters of Mary of Nazareth. And the reason I picked the name Mary of Nazareth, it was because, every community exists based on the needs of the local time. And in Boston was a lot of suffering because of scandal. People were angry and hurt, and some of them have left the church. So I felt like we need to go back to Nazareth, how we can, if people are not coming to church, how we can bring the church out to them by creating these small Nazareth communities, how, Jesus and Mary and Joseph lived among ordinary people in Nazareth. So I wanted to bring that spirit of Nazareth in the heart of Boston.
Can you tell us what it's like to have had an audience with the Holy Father and what you feel he told you to bring to America?
I was really very blessed to have that private audience with our Holy Father, Pope Francis. And when I was in his presence, I felt like, he's human too. Yes, he has 2 billion people on his shoulder to care for, but he's human too. And I just wanted, everybody goes to him asking him for something. So I wanted to go to him, not to ask him for something, first to give him something. So I gave him a holy card of the Blessed Mother, and I told him, Holy Father, I want you to know that we all pray for you, and we pray for your mission and for your ministry and for the cross that you are carrying on behalf of our church. And I knelt at his feet, according to my culture, and I said, Your Holiness, I'm a mother of a new community, and I would like to ask for your blessings. So he gave me blessings before I left.
Mother Olga, I have one last question for you.
Yes.
You came to Boston during one of the hardest moments for the church in Boston, in the middle of when the sexual abuse scandal broke.
Yeah.
What is your message for those of us who are experiencing a broken church?
One of the things I always say, the worst enemy of spiritual life is discouragement. So I just encourage people not to be discouraged in these times. These are very troubled times. It's almost like I feel the ship of the church has been tossed in so many really murky waters. And when I think of our church has survived 2,000 years, and they were tough times in every generation, in every century, and every part of the world. But the church has survived because it's not our church, your church, my church, but it's a church of Jesus Christ, and he will protect it.
Well, it's a pleasure to have met you here.
Thank you, dear.
And thank you for sharing so much of your story.
Welcome, dear. It was a blessing, and I'm humbled to be here to spend time with you too, especially on, such a topic that's dear to our hearts, both of us, to share about our Holy Mother, Our Lady of Guadalupe.
Amen.
Thank you. Thank you.
Follow us on our social media channels to watch an exclusive online extra interview with Mother Olga as she discusses her work with the Given Institute. Check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. EWTN News In Depth has been covering the church in Iraq, including on-the-ground coverage of the papal trip to Iraq more than a year ago. Correspondent Colin Flynn brought you the incredible images of Pope Francis's meeting with Islamic leaders, Catholics in Iraq, and his visit to the Nineveh Plains. Head over to the EWTN YouTube page to watch all the special moments of the historic papal trip and see its impact on our Catholic brothers and sisters there.
So inspiring to involve our kids in our religious life.
Games, music, and Mass, the camp that helps Catholic families grow closer to God. Up next. camp is a great way to learn a sport or craft, make new friends, and stay active. A unique summer camp in Austria has a twist on a traditional summer camp. They invite not just children, but the whole family. And their focus? To teach Catholics more about their faith and how to live it out in our growing secular society. Vatican Bureau Chief Andreas Tannhauser takes us there.
It's a family thing. We all love to come here for so many different reasons.
Yeah, one being just to see such a young church. It's really inspiring to see you're not alone, you know?
We've been coming for the last years. It's a week to connect with other Catholic families, and we've met wonderful new people, made new friendships, and yesterday renewed my vows with my wife, so.
Summertime is family time. Time to take a breath. In the heart of Europe and Austria, Catholic families come together every summer for a special retreat. Not far away from where the famous Von Trapp family from the movie The Sound of Music live, more than 200 families spend a week in the scenic village of Palau. More than 500 children and their parents take over the park of the scenic village. In a large tent, parents and kids start the day together with prayer. Then, the adults listen to talks of priests and family experts, while the little ones are off to their own programs comprised of catechesis and plays. The topics discussed during the retreat range from raising children in the Catholic faith, forgiveness and reconciliation within the family, and balancing work and family life. Every day, the participants attend Mass, and on one day, they undertake a foot pilgrimage up to a near mountain to a famous Marian shrine. One of the young priests walking with them is Rupert Sandner from the Archdiocese of Salzburg.
Families, I think first of all they look for a real vision how you can be a Catholic family in the world today, how you can help each other as a couple and overcome difficulties is the greatest gift what families can take from the Family Week.
Austria is a German-speaking neighboring country of Germany. The German synodal path with its controversial undermining of church teachings regarding family, marriage and sexuality is being noticed, but does not play a big role for the families here. They focus on other issues, as one of the organizers explains.
This event has grown for over 20 years now to provide possibilities for family to develop their ideas of Christian life within their own family. And every family who comes here can share their problems, their needs, their efforts, just to know they are not alone and they are fighting the same fight for the children, partners, and families around them.
Not to be left alone with the challenges. That is what many families brings to this summer camp. And they do find encouragement for their daily lives.
We also need time for breaks because families need time to go step by step towards their encounter with God. We need good talks for the families, for the couples, also for the children. In the middle of the place here we have a big tent for adoration. And all that leads the couples here say, okay, I met God. I feel more strength in my faith. The children sing new songs, go to Holy Mass. After these meetings, many families tell that, yeah, okay, now my children love to go to church on Sunday, yeah, again. something happened with them. They find new Christian friends to go their way, to continue the way in faith.
Like in many other regions of the world, divorce rates in Europe are high. The organizers of the family event have a simple yet effective answer: how to avoid divorce and family separation.
Say the thing what Mother Teresa said, yeah, a family that prays together stays together. And here is a place where to learn how to pray as a couple, how to pray as a family, how to pray also myself, be together with God, and that's one of really the focus here. So prayer is the key.
In Pella, Austria, for EWTN News in Depth, Andreas Turnhauser.
What a wonderful way for Catholic families to close the summer season and step into the school year refreshed in their faith. We hope you enjoyed today's program. I'm Montse Alvarado. Join us next week for more stories important to your Catholic life.